Hey guys, as you know, I'm constantly trying to help you level the playing field and making sure that you know and you learn how to look at the stock market and how to look at just generally trading and investing like a professional. Because I think a lot of people just simply aren't even given the chance. I see a lot of education out there that to some extent oversimplifies things, but also sometimes kind of makes things too complicated or makes people look at the wrong thing. So today I want to have a look at a very simple chart pattern. Again, it's not to make it overly simplistic, but what I've noticed over time is that one thing that separates professional investors from people at home is that what the pros do is they like to understand what's the market sentiment. Is it bullish? Is it bearish? Is it neutral? And one way of figuring that out is to look at chart patterns, and you look at them not just through the lens of pretty pictures, but you look at them through the lens of what does it tell us about investor psychology, investor sentiment, and investor positioning. So the chart pattern we're going to look at today, and again, this is not to make it overly too simple, it's something called an island reversal. Interesting name, but let's have a look at it. And so what this pattern does in essence is it tells us, you know, when investors have been too complacent one way or another. We're looking at shares of Intel here, and this island reversal actually just happened a few days ago. And let me just bring this a bit more into the middle of the chart of the screen so you can see this as good as possible. And so what we had here, we had the stock move very sharply to the upside, and then before earnings, and it gapped higher right here. So I'm going to take a little arrow and draw this here. So this is where the stock, what we call, gapped higher. You can see that, right? There's a sort of an air pocket here where the stock gapped higher. Well, then the stock basically went sideways for a few days, and then earnings came out, which you can't see, but this is the day that earnings came out. And the stock, after earnings, immediately gapped down in a very big way. So now what we have is we have these two gaps, a gap to the upside, this one here, right? Followed by the gap to the downside, leaving us this price action up here, this sort of isolated. That's hence we call it an island, or I guess people refer to it as an island. And so basically what it's telling us is that the sort of chart chasers, people that really didn't know any better before earnings, thought that chasing the stock higher after an already steep rally that then went vertical was a good thing to do. Well, the smart money definitely didn't do that, and this was then ultimately came home to roost once the stock gapped lower. What it's telling us also is that the maximum point of bullishness for this period had been reached. The last of the buyers bought up here. So it's also one of the highest probability patterns because, again, we're not just looking at the lens of technical analysis. We're looking at it to see what does it tell us about investor psychology and investor sentiment. And so what I found is that by drawing these lines on the chart and all these kind of things, that's nice. But if you can contextualize it and sort of back up the pictures on the chart to understand what it's telling you about investor psychology, investor sentiment, investor positioning, you have such a high probability of profits, and the reason for that being that you can just understand it better. So you have a better chance of actually executing a trade and also taking the profits where you need to take profits and stopping yourself out where you need to stop yourself out. So speaking of which, talking about stop losses and those kind of things, I mean, obviously if this stock were to reverse and then go break above here, that would be a last resort stop loss. The profit targets, are really fairly low to the downside. So you can really let these stocks kind of run once they start exhausting themselves, because it's just an extreme point of bullishness up here is what this pattern really tells us. So anyway, folks, I hope you appreciate this, or you can at least use this to some extent. Give us a thumbs up like if you enjoy this, if you enjoyed this channel. Let other people know about it, and we'll talk to you soon.